there is like a drawback maybe, or maybe something there's like a huge debate about, which is the confidentiality could be also maybe for copyright. And these two things are also important for evaluators to think about. Because when we utilize AI, we upload information on AI. So in terms of confidentiality, we don't know where those data go. We don't know if this data can be used by other people. So as evaluators, confidentiality is crucial for us to take it into consideration. Also copyright. When I get something from AI, is it something that attributed to me, or I should be attributed to AI? So in terms of providing resources and references, so who should own this information?
Yeah. Yes. No, totally agree. I think it's opening up a big can of questions. Hey, Changemaker, welcome to ReThink Social Change Podcast, a show dedicated to helping social change practitioners improve the way they make change happen to achieve tangible and sustained impact. I'm your host, Ratiba Sharif. I've worked with some of the world's leading social change organizations for more than 2 decades on 4 continents to help them design better projects, learn from them, and measure their results. Using ReThink Social Change cards, I will challenge changemakers like yourself to share their experience on what worked, what didn't, and why, in a very unique way. I will shuffle the deck of 54 ReThink Social Change cards and randomly draw 4 cards that will guide our conversation. So if you're ready for unscripted, jargon-free stories from the field, let's dive into today's episode. I'm thrilled to receive Ali Al Khatib on the podcast. Ali is an evaluator and monitoring and evaluation specialist. He develops M&E systems, knowledge management frameworks. He refines performance monitoring strategies to ensure data quality. He's collaborated with major players like USAID, UK's FCDO, the EU, IBRD, and the UN across Palestine, Tunisia, and Libya. Ali is very skilled at transforming data into compelling visuals, whether it's through dynamic dashboards or engaging infographics. When he's not immersed in M&E project work, Ali promotes evaluation excellence as the president of the Palestinian Evaluation Association and the chair of the board of directors of the Middle East and North Africa Evaluation Association. Let's get him in. So nice to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Ratiba. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So you're a Palestinian evaluator. I'm glad to have a chance to talk to you and see where the cards will take our conversation. Hopefully you can share a little bit about, both your work on the ground, the reality of your work on the ground, and some of the larger dynamics at play right now as well.
Perfect.
So, a little bit how it works. I'm going to shuffle the cards. I'm going to take 4 cards. Hopefully there'll be cards that will engage us in an interesting conversation. I'm just taking any card I get. All right, so here we go. I have, in terms of change, I have institutional change. So it's about thinking of projects that you've evaluated, worked on, where you needed to change practices with relationship within organization systems, right, for institutional change. We have technology as a tool, so the use of technology or not, how it's harnessed. We're talking inclusive. So inclusion talks about values of involving all stakeholders. And then we have milestones. What are the key milestones, for example, in institutional change, for example, that you've noticed, or milestones within your work. Now, the cards, you can speak to any of them. If one of them doesn't appeal or doesn't bring up any ideas, you can leave it aside, bring it in later. So here are our cards.
Good, perfect. I'm really excited.
So, first question to you. Any thoughts? Do they remind you of projects or work that you've been doing? And you can start wherever you wish.
Yeah, actually, these topics to me it's like related to each other, and I'm really excited to talk about all of them. So let's start with institutional change then.
Let's do that.
Yeah, okay. So institutional change is really important. As evaluators, one of our objectives is to not only to evaluate projects or programs, but also to change the situation, whether in our organization or institutions or outside our organizations. I believe that if we would like to change the context and to change things outside our institutions, we have to start from our institutions first. This is why it comes to me, it's something related to culture, evaluation culture. And I think this is one of the important things that we need to focus on when we work with our colleagues within the organizations, in our organizations or other organizations, is to make evaluation rooted in their culture. Because they have to believe in evaluation in order to deliver evaluation to others. And this can be done by talking to them openly, doing pause and reflect with them, showing the importance of evaluation, how evaluation is important for decision making, and also how evaluation can help them to design their current projects or future project. And also, we can also tell them that this is really important for accountability and transparency with other with the stakeholders they are accountable for. So I think this is one of the issues that we always focus on, not in only with our work, but also with the conferences and sessions we attend as evaluators in the region and internationally. And it is one of the topics usually conferences tackle and try to improve and also to hear from other evaluators how to make it more feasible and make it more tangible within institutions.
Yeah. So Ali, there's two things when you talk about institutional change. So there is, as you say, the culture within. So it's institutions, the institution that you work with or for or hires you as an evaluator, their culture, which is going to impact how they receive the findings from the evaluation, right? And what they will do with those findings. But there's also the evaluating institutional change, right? Programs for institutional change.
Yeah.
Do you see a difference between the two?
No, in terms of concept, they are the same, related to culture, related to norms. However, maybe the audience and the targeting group is different. When we talk about our institutions, we talk about our colleagues, our decision makers. When we do institutional evaluation related to institutions, we talk to their decision makers, their stakeholders. So I think from the concept is the same. However, the difference in the audience and the target group.
Okay, so that's for institutional change. We'll talk more about it. What about
Yeah.
the other parts? We've got technology inclusion, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah, technology is my passion actually, because my first university degree was in engineering, and I started my career in technology sector, and I believe in technology, and also this is why I try always to deploy technology in work, and especially in monitoring and evaluation, because I believe that technology is one of the arms that of the evaluation, because it facilitates our work, it make it more accurate. Building MEL systems within any organization, I know it is something related to creating MEL plans, theory of change, and indicators, something like this. But this will not be reliable without having technology. technology helps us in data collection, helps us in verifying and validating data as well. Especially nowadays, because we are now in a situation where we sometimes deal with people remotely. So technology will help us to collect information from remote sites. Also, from my experience, because I worked in different situations where there is like a conflict and our physical presence there was really impossible. So we relied on technology to get information and also to deal with to meet with the stakeholders and also conduct interviews, collecting information from the field. So I think technology is one of the evaluation arms.
Yeah, and evaluation technology is really helping, especially I think since COVID. It's kind of amplified, right? It kind of set technology it's into M&E proper. Now with AI, it's another conversation. Maybe we'll talk about it as well, and some of the opportunities that there are there for evaluators. But I want to stop a little bit about talking about institutional change, bringing the two together. So we're talking about an organization, so the institutional frameworks that are in an organization that wants to set up an M&E system. Mm-hmm. Because technology can help. I found through experience that it's very heavy to create, for example, a dashboard to collect all information and aggregate all information, especially if you're working with local partners, local associations. It can become very heavy. How have you made that as a robust system, but at the same time not too heavy on those who do the work on the ground? Otherwise, sometimes the project seems to be always about collecting data and not so much about doing the work on the ground.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Ratiba, in terms of deploying technology. We need to make this into consideration. I mean, not to complicate things and to make it simple and easy to be used. There is an approach, I like it so much, which is KISS approach. Keep it simple and stupid. So this applies also in technology. I had a situation before where there was a robust technology, a robust IT system for one of the organization. It was really big, really huge, but because there was like a lot of details, the system actually failed because it wasn't user friendly. It was very complicated. So I learned from that that the system should be really easy, and it doesn't necessarily to answer all your questions. However, it should answer your main problems or questions. This is really important to be aware of when we design technology. Also, technology, as you said, helps us in creating dynamic dashboards and infographics for data representation, which is also important because I think this is the end product or the final product of those systems to show decision makers, stakeholders, what has been achieved, where are we going, where are the gaps, where are the successes, where are the failures. And I think that this can be done very perfectly if it was visualized in like infographic or a dynamic dashboard where people can see the progress visually rather than letting them read pages about progress or about failures or gaps. So yeah, I totally agree with you. Technology, technology visualization is are the same.
Yeah, and exactly, that's the quality of dashboards or interactive dashboards is that you can see in real time the situation of the project, whether we're getting closer to targets, for example, or not. But mostly that's for the outputs, quantitative indicators. That's very clear. It's very easy because you quantify them and they're easier to collect, right? The problem is like, what are the main questions? If you ask a project, what is the main question that you want answered, then it will become qualitative. Because in most cases, it's a change in a way of doing things, or so it's in a practice change, or a process change or a systems change. And that requires more than a very easy kind of number, right? Or it requires more questions because there's more nuances, and you can't kind of put it into a package and say, okay, this is the indicator for a systems change. And so from experience, that's where I found a lot of the challenge is that you can have an infographic for the outputs, but when you get to the meat and juice of the project, of why you're doing the work, then it becomes quite difficult to visualize it and to have the tools to be able to show that progress. And I'm hoping that AI, I don't know if you've ever used AI for qualitative data collection or analysis from your experience and how that has worked.
Yeah, actually AI is a trend now, and everybody now is trying to utilize AI as much as possible and to get the advantage of it. Personally, yes, I use it in my work. For example, it helps me to develop even before like the actual evaluation, to develop the TOR, scope of works, statement of works, also to rephrase some of the text. So I use AI so much when I do trainings, for example. If I would like to produce slides, I also use AI to visualize some of the ideas I would like to deliver to audience. Sometimes, if I would like to get more information technically about a specific sector, that to help me for literature review or desk review, I also utilize AI in that. I know AI is still in the beginning stage, but I expect that AI will be crucial part in our work and in our job, even for data analysis. Currently, data analysis, you have raw data. Also, AI can help you to analyze this information. So AI can produce cross-tabulation or measuring frequencies or even correlations between the information.
No, absolutely, and I think newer versions they're exponential, right? The different versions of AI are getting better and better. Actually, quite interestingly, scarily.
But there is in terms of AI, I think there is like a drawback maybe, or maybe something there's like a huge debate about, which is the confidentiality could be also maybe for copyright. And these two things are also important for evaluators to think about, because when we utilize AI, we upload information on AI. So in terms of confidentiality, we don't know where those data go. We don't know if this data can be used by other people. So as evaluators, confidentiality is crucial for us to take it into consideration. Also, copyright. When I get something from AI, is it something that attributed to me, or I should be attributed to AI? So in terms of providing resources and references, so who should own this information?
Yeah. Yes. No, totally agree. I think it's opening up a big can of questions that we will have to tackle, little by little. But those are all valid questions. There are some AI apps or platforms that offer that do quote sources, for example. So those you can find. But you're right. Is the final product yours or not? I guess it depends on how much of the editing power you have, or editing work that you have, you do on that. So those are all interesting questions. Now, Ali, I know you've worked a lot in difficult contexts. You mentioned it briefly, the use of technology, for example, for helping you gain access or get information when you cannot be there physically. How has that, talk to me a little bit about that context, specific context where it's very difficult to go. Libya is difficult to access. Palestine, some areas are very difficult to access increasingly. So tell me a little bit about the effect of
fragility of working, doing evaluations in fragility, and all those components. Because when you were talking about confidentiality, I was thinking about the part inclusion as well. How can you include people they feel confident in very sensitive environments, very fragile and sensitive environments?
Yeah, sure. Let me start with my experience when I worked I was based in Tunisia, and the project was being implemented in Libya. And my role was to manage something called third-party monitoring component. So in my work, I was dealing with teams, Libyan teams, on the ground in Libya. So their responsibility was to meet with stakeholders there, collect information, and send it back to us in Tunisia for us to analyze and reporting those information to the donor. It was really tough. So the approach that we adopted back then was to have great communication channel with the teams working there, and also good relationship with them. We had periodic meetings with them on a weekly basis or monthly basis to hear from them some of the challenges they are facing to collect information about security situation there. And also from our side, we were providing them with a lot of trainings, raise their capacity, and also to inform them that their safety is really a most important thing. So we followed an approach called do not harm. So if there is any risk any risk around people who are collecting information, we were very clear: don't do anything and just be safe. Because as you said, because the situation was fragile and there are a lot of problems there, we deployed technology. So we developed a mobile app. So they were collecting information directly, and they were populating those information on their mobiles and send it directly to us. Working remotely is not easy when it comes to data validation and data verification. You rely on people there to collect information. So from our end, we through using technology, we managed also to build some of the functionality within the technology to compare data together in order to validate the information. If there is any kind of conflict or any kind of discrepancy in terms of data, we go back to those people and ask why there is like discrepancy. Taking photos also one of the approaches we use to validate information and to get the holistic picture about the situation. That was in Libya. In Palestine, similarly, I was based in West Bank, and the project was being implemented in West Bank and Gaza Strip. And I was dealing with our colleagues there in Gaza remotely. Similarly, we had periodic meetings with them, and also provided them with a lot of trainings. Currently, that was like years before, but currently the situation is totally different in Gaza, that makes the doing evaluation there is really nearly impossible, let's say. And also it's as an evaluator, as a Palestinian, I feel very sorry, because there are like a lot of projects implemented there, and we were talking about sustainability, and just like in few months, everything has been turned into dust. There is no projects, nothing means about sustainability. So yeah, this is the challenges we face in situations like this.
Yeah. No, I know it's. I mean, right now, it's not, evaluations are not the
the most important thing, right? People are trying to survive right now, so it's not we're not talking about that at all. Before the war, what was the situation? How easy was it to get that, to validate? I mean, I like the fact that the app has inbuilt validation or verification mechanism, which is very good, because that's the most important thing on the ground, right? When you still have you're still with the people who you're collecting information from, to be able to go and validate and verify, etc. Now, how was it before the war started? And were you working on institutional change? What were some of the challenges in those contexts for measuring the effects of institutional change?
Yes, sure. So when we do evaluation or when we do data collection, also we get into consideration the context. We also get information about the current context there, because this information is really important for us as evaluators and for donors who are funding projects there. It's our role also to show them what is the current situation and to show them if the projects are being implemented as it's planned or not. And this is definitely affect the institutional or directly or indirectly the institutional change, because in this case maybe those organizations can think twice based on the current context how they implement the project, if they have to change maybe the priorities of implementing things. So also, remote monitoring context is really important.
Yeah, no, totally agree with you. And that context changes. It can change overnight, which completely shifts the dynamics around a project, around an intervention. It's a political environment. It's dynamic. It's very charged as well, interest-wise, depending on who are involved. You said about, we talked about the institutional change at the very beginning of our conversation, about the fact that it touches a culture, it touches norms, etc. Now, the context monitoring allows us to adapt a project to a changing context, right? How does the culture of an organization that, for example, hires you, accept the reality of the context and adapt to it? Because when the project was designed, it was designed with a specific objective in mind. Sometimes it's, the fact that a donor is funding in a specific location could be a political, for political interest, for geostrategic interest, for economic interest. So how are they really open to adapting the objectives of the project, the interventions itself, the activities, to that changing context and to the needs within that changing context, even if those needs are different from their interests?
Yeah, I think this is a very important question, Ratiba, and I think the key word here is evidence. So if we have evidence about what's going on in the context, that would facilitate us to convince decision makers and our organizations to change their approach, maybe, or to adopt a new approach to implement their projects or programs there on the ground. Also, having learning sessions and collaboration with other stakeholders, that also will help to change the mindset and the culture of decision makers within organizations and other stakeholders. Because through, for example, if we have information that was collected through a scientific method, that means there is like a lot of evidence within that. So we can bring those information and collect other stakeholders around the table and discuss those information together, and to end up with a solution that lead to a change, or maybe change the way of thinking. So the three keywords, as I mentioned, evidence, learning, and collaboration.
Yeah, that's very true. And from my experience, that helps. And it's a great way. It's a great opportunity as well sometimes to revisit some of the hypotheses that underlie a project design or an intervention or even a theory of change. And having the stakeholders, I think, around the table and the evidence and using the evidence to inform those conversations is key. And I don't think we do much of that, like gathering data and using it really. I mean, it's written, right? We talk about it, but in practice, it's not often done. So I think the more we can do that, the more we can change the culture, but also change the perspective on what M&E is, what monitoring can really help do, beyond accountability upward, right? To donors and different milestones of the project, milestone. I wanted to talk to you a little bit. We had a little bit of that conversation before we started recording. When I shared that the cards were designed to have conversations, open up. My cards were designed to have that conversation, open up the dialogue, invite people, practitioners on the ground to talk about what they do, etc. And I wanted to talk about institutional change and inclusion. And I wanted to ask you, when you report back and when you're engaging in evaluation, how inclusive is it of different partners, of people on the ground, of different voices?
Sure. Actually, inclusion, it's really one of the key issues that all evaluators should take into consideration. Because inclusion, we think inclusion, we deploy inclusion in different level of evaluation. From the beginning till the end of the evaluation. So, for example, from the beginning, when we would like to conduct any evaluation, for sure we need also to engage not only, for example, men in the evaluation. We also try to include women in the evaluation as evaluators, as data collection. When we get information for literature review or desk review, we should also meet both gender. Also, we should meet marginalized people, like people who live in remote areas, youth, women, disabled persons. So we have to take this into our consideration when we collect information. When it comes to doing the actual evaluation and collect the information from stakeholders, we have to include everybody in that evaluation, and also to get information from them, to get data from them. When it comes to reporting, also we should disseminate, or we should present the information and discuss the findings with everybody, not only with a specific group, but also with everybody. So inclusion, it enters in every let's say aspect in evaluation process.
Yeah, it's interesting, because from my experience, what I've seen is that, especially if you're working at the institutional level, with your counterparts, it's sometimes difficult to for them to adhere to your inclusion checklist, for example, for selection of participants in an activity, especially in the institutional level. And that actually does, because you develop a criteria for selection of participants, for example, based on the possible leverage that they will have to bring about change in institutions, right? Go back to their work and really work on processes or systems, and that's how you select them, right? But then the institutional, the institutions that you work with send you other participants because for political reasons, for strategic reasons, etc. And oftentimes you can have, for example, trainings for institutional change, so capacity building training or capacity strengthening, and it's the wrong person. So yes, so you have someone from that institution, but it's the wrong person, and they won't be able to. They're not well positioned to be able to bring about change that we're seeking. And so somehow you train that person, but it's not the person that needed to be at that meeting. And sometimes it's difficult to engage with our clients or partners to have the right people. I don't know if you've encountered that in your work and how you try to navigate that, especially for evaluations.
Yeah, actually, maybe that leads me to go and talk about equity, because inclusion and equity could be related, but I think they are a little bit different. So when what you just mentioned, it is maybe related more to equity, because that means not necessarily that the beneficiary of any intervention where the correct or the accurate or the true beneficiaries. Sometimes we feel that there are other beneficiaries that are where potential beneficiaries. They have to be part of those interventions. However, unfortunately, they were not, because maybe there is like something wrong with the criteria, as you said, selection criteria from the project, or maybe there is like a kind of agenda that project is trying to implement, or maybe their mandate is doesn't cover everybody. So as evaluators, we usually, or we should, not focus only on the current beneficiaries, but also we should to look at the circle like in a bigger, and see who could be part of this intervention, but they didn't participate or they didn't being engaged. Also, in this case, we can give recommendation to those institutions to include those people in their future design.
Yes, it really is, and that's why I really think that a lot of the work and a lot more time should be spent in designing projects and reviewing that design, the hypotheses underlying the theories of change, and the intervention itself, the perception of the reality on the ground is going to be key to having an intervention that is at least response to the needs of those you want to serve. So that's important. I have the card here, and it kind of comes. It's attached or related. The card of milestone here that I wanted to talk about. You mentioned that the keywords were learning, collaboration, and evidence learning and collaboration. From your experience, what are the key milestones within the lifetime of a project? The evaluator comes and looks at the project with hindsight, right? The project has already taken place, unless it's a midterm evaluation or a developmental evaluator who's embedded in the project. It is usually with hindsight. With hindsight, what have we learned is the key milestones within the lifetime of a project where there is possibility of pivoting the intervention. Could you speak to that a little?
Yeah, sure. So I think pause and reflect. This is really important. In the middle of any interventions or project, it is healthy and it is necessarily everybody, that technical people or decision makers or some stakeholders, to sit together, pause, and then we review the progress that has been made, and think about it. Think if there is any gaps, if there is any challenges has been appeared during the implementation. So it's gonna be a good opportunity for everybody to rethink, to maybe sometimes to redesign, or maybe to change the theory of change they developed before. So it is really important. And also this it's like a cross-cutting with the three things that we talked about the institutional change, about inclusion as well. So it is really important.
Yeah, and I found, Ali, is that we try to, right? We try to institutionalize that. We try to set up key pause and reflect moments, and we can do it in different ways. From experience, again, what I have found is that, for example, the small pause and reflect sessions, it's the after action review sessions, for example, that's very close after an intervention. You can really reframe it, rework the activity itself, maybe some of the selection processes, ensuring, you could put strategies in place to ensure more inclusion, more transparency in how you select your participants, etc. So that's very easy, and that's minimal in terms of change. Say there's been an election, local election, the whole local authorities that you were intervening with have changed. It's a new party that's we got the elections, etc. So there's a need for revisiting, as you say, some of the assumptions and maybe the theory of change of your intervention. It's oftentimes very difficult to do that. The actual effort it requires, right? And even I haven't seen any donor who's open to that change at least within the year. You could review at the end of each year if it's a multi-year project, but not within the year. So it makes it very difficult actually to adapt, makes the adaptation. So even if you have the evidence, say you have the evidence, you actually use it to inform your pause and reflect, making those changes and starting the engine again, because sometimes it's a redesign of a project, is oftentimes not done because of the implications, budgetary implications. You have, if you're working with local partners, it trickles down to the local partner. They have to change as well. So oftentimes it's not done. And we keep on doing something, tweaking. So it's not adapting, it's just tweaking, making small changes. But like real rethinking a project, I haven't found that it has happened in multi-year projects. What's been your experience on that? And how has, if the evaluation, how has it helped it, bring about that conversation and push that forward?
Yeah, you are right, Ratiba. In terms of change, it's not easy. And as evaluators, we don't have magic stick to change everything in one night. So change needs patience. Change needs time to happen. And for changing it becomes more complicated if you deal with big institutions that has a certain culture within it. So it is difficult for evaluators and change agents to change the certain processes or certain interventions within projects. However, this could be easier if we are talking about local NGOs or small projects where change can be considered easier, and those projects don't have this level of bureaucracy as the big ones. So change will be easier. I've been in situations where working with those small projects, so I feel that I had more authority and more power to convince people to change systems, even to change a log frame. However, I found that more difficult when I work in big institutions, big organizations. So yeah, it's a challenge, but as evaluator, we do our best to change, and change needs time and patience.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's very rewarding when you're working with national, local organizations, regional organizations within the country. It's very rewarding because the change that you make, you can see almost like very quickly how that affects the way they work, the way they collect data, the way they provide evidence. It's quite rewarding. And I agree. If you're talking about larger organizations, so larger NGOs who hire you, or even donor organizations, it's quite hard to. They're shifting, they're changing, but it's very slow. And there are elements or people within those organizations that probably speak the same language as you and see things the same way, but it's bringing that kind of getting to that tipping point where the organization changes. It's not easy. From your experience, to conclude, Ali, I wanted to know, you worked on evaluation for many organizations and donors and countries. What are the key things that you've observed, the patterns that you've observed, either in terms of the way of working, of culture, of inclusion, any changes that are also being observed right now in the way of doing business?
Yes, actually, I think that those institutions, because when we talk about about like organizations, the majority of those organizations implementing projects are international and multinational organizations. So I feel that working closely with local partners is really important, and this is something missing across all of the projects and the work I worked in. However, some of those projects try to be more engaging with local partners, but not to the level that we all desire. So localization is one of the things that we advocate for as practitioners and evaluators. Because it is really important. Through localization, you can get more reliable information. You can also include, in this case, we implement the inclusion as well perfectly through localization. Raising the capacity of local practitioners to be evaluators, and also in terms of change. Usually, when requests come from local power or local organizations, that will be more convincing for international organizations to change, rather than just like individual practitioners, local practitioners trying to convince those international organizations. So I think the secret ingredient is localization.
Yeah, and agree with you. And there's a whole movement for that. And actually, donors have worked on that. There were quite a few initiatives where we were going local, and that's happened. It's slow still, because I think it's about the systems in place at local level for managing the project, for doing the evidence. I think it's really we're going a long way. The talks about decriminalizing aid is interesting because they're providing some pathways towards that kind of localization, but it's still not. We're still not there, because the culture, as you said, the mindset is still very much not centered on local realities and on the value of local organizations, right? The value add they bring. So I think that's something that we have to show, and I hope that evaluators do, highlight that when it appears in evaluations, the value of going local or focusing on. Yeah. So thank you so much. We really enjoyed this conversation, Ali. Thanks for joining me on this podcast. I wanted to know if you any final words.
No, actually, no. Thanks. It was really nice talking to you, and thanks for having me to this session. And hope you the best.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Ali. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of ReThink's Social Change Podcast. I hope you got a lot of value and actionable insights from today's show. Would love if you take a minute to leave us a review. And if you work on social change and are up for the challenge, reach out. And before you go, be sure to subscribe so you're the first to know when we release a new episode. Till then, be the change.